Hello Natroners, and welcome back to another episode of VFX with Natron. So, today we've had a really weird week, okay? Today we're going to be looking at doing a haunted title, because today, well, this week is, in the next few weeks, I should say, is going to be Halloween, and it figures that we want to do some things that are more related, at least if you're watching the live stream, something more related to the season. As for YouTubers, well, you know, I might post this one a little early just because, you know, the YouTube stream is up and, you know, whatever. We'll figure it out as we go. Anyhow, so the question is what is today's goal? Alright, so here we are over in Natron, and I guess we ought to get started. I didn't have as much prep time as I had thought I was going to have for today, but I think I can still wing the vast majority of this. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is add a text node, obviously. Whoops, I wanted a tab, not to right click. Hit text for text node. Let's connect that up. Let's put in something other than Natron today. Let's do horror. Let's do it in caps. Horror. All right, and that might change things, but let's see. We're gonna make it center interact. And we're going to set the size. Let me see make sure I've got the right size here. I've got to just do a couple adjustments here because as I said, my Natron isn't quite set up the way, or I wasn't quite as prepared as I wanted to be due to things having to rebuild a lot of things. So, all right. So anyway, font size is going to be, let's scroll down so I'm ensuring that I'm not covering this up. We're going to make the font size 200, and that brings it up to a nice big level. And I think I switched the font from Arial to Calibri, which is this, I do believe. Yes, that's what I picked, and I just am double checking, and I also set it so that the weight was ultra heavy. So just make sure your weight is ultra heavy, and that should give us this. All right, so the first thing we need to do is, of course, we need to make this look more horror-like. So we're going to put in an eye distort. So tab, eye distort, and for the eye distort settings, we're going to, obviously, because it's an eye distort and we're not using a ST map, we're going to be doing the eye distort. We always set it to 0.5 by 0.5. And what we're going to be doing with this is we're going to be displacing it so that it looks like it's jangled and like messed up. It's not a clean title. We want this to be, you know, off. It looks, you know, horror-y, like, you know, potentially blood or something along those lines, although we're not going to be coloring it blood-like. We also, what are we going to use as its UV map? Our UV map, I'm going to stick with, for this one, we're going to just do an SE, and I seem to have caps lock on, SE-EXPR, and no, noise for the first one. We'll go with SE noise, UV, connect it up, and let me just double check, because I think, right, all right, so all I did for this one is I kept it in its default. I kept it pretty much everything default, with the exception that I changed the X and Y values. So we reduced the X And let's Alt-P because I brought it below 0 by accident. So I brought this down. Let's take a look at it closer up. I brought this down. We can see streaks through this because of the alpha channel. We want to keep those streaks in there. Actually, it's not going to show if we don't keep that for right now. I set the noise size to 50, and then I kept the Y value the same, so that if we look at this, we can see that this just creates an up-down movement. And what that's going to do for the iDistort is we're going to just up our iDistort value. So we're going to put this, let's start it off at 10. We're not going to go all the way up to 100 because we just want to create some just up-down movement here to create it, sort of give it this sort of a vertically skewed, I think 40 looks good. We get this nice vertical skewed up-down movement without getting a whole lot on the X. We do have a little bit of movement on the X because we still left in 50, a value of 50, which just gives it a little bit of push to the side, but not as much as the up-down. So it gives that nice thing without having to go. This should work with almost any font, by the way. Or any Helvetica-based font, aka shouldn't say Helvetica, any sans serif font, aka, you know, a Helvetica or something along those lines, like this is. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I added a bit of blur to this because we're trying to make this look kind of ghostly. That's the goal of this, is to sort of make it, you know, waver like it's a ghost. So we're going to put in a blur. We're just going to do a straight blur. Whoops, why did the tab not work? Tab! There we go. Blur. And there we go. Blur. And we're going to just, not very much. We're just going to take it up. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see this better. We'll take it... one probably isn't doing anything, but if we take this up to 4, we get just a little bit of softness on the edge, and that will help it blend in, and it sort of gives it sort of a... I find that with horror, I don't know about you, but to me, when you think about things that are dead, and horror and Halloween and stuff, you're thinking about Day of the Dead and stuff like that. You're thinking about old things, and to me that also needs to be portrayed a bit in your titles if you're going to be doing it. And to me, you know, creating something that looks older, like older film or something like that, adds in, along with like all the traits of that are desirable. And by the way, I just noticed we're looking at the blue channel here, but I must have accidentally hit B from above, which probably means I was over the viewer when I hit tab one time. Anyhow, softness to give it a little bit of blur. Now we're going to do another iDistort, okay? So the first one was just to create the fundamental look of the text, to give it sort of this horror look, and to give it some vertical stripes, which sort of add to that whole drippy kind of feel that you see. It also could be seen as like pumpkin, you know, ridges or something along those lines, because pumpkins have very vertical ridges. And we're going to be, by the way, coloring this orange, obviously, because we saw that in the video. So anyway, let's do our second iDistort. So iDistort number 2. And for this one, we're going to, again, 0.5, because we want this to work from the halfway point. And we'll set this for the time being to 100, because this one is going to be animated, and this is going to be doing our actual thing, our actual movements. Now, there's 2 ways we could approach this. We could either do this movement using, you know, SE noises, or we could do this using a single SE-EXPR. And to me, I personally think that SE-EXPR, I like using SE-EXPR, but if people want, they can do it. There's really not much difference. What we're going to do, let's get into it. What we're going to do is actually we're going to use an SE-EXPR simple. And the reason we're going to do that is because, as you may remember, SE-EXPR simple allows us to access our R channel and our G channel separately by default. So we can literally control two different, the two different axes that handle our UV texture map for our displacement individually without having to do extra code or extra, well, it's technically we're duplicating code, but we don't have to, separate it inside of things and play with this stuff too much more. So I'm going to just plug that in, and right now we have nothing going on. So what we're going to do is to start with, we're going to put in, sorry, I'm looking, all those arrows are me scrolling back through the actual expression over on the side so I can explain it as we go. So we're going to use two FBMs, one in each channel. The first one's going to be the R channel. So this is going to be, R is going to be the side to side, the horizontal movement. So we're going to put an FBM in here, which is the same as if we had taken an SE noise and done an FBM. And for this FBM, because we can't define more than one line in here, well, technically we could by using semicolons and stuff, but it would be get kind of ugly. We're going to keep this nice and simple. We're going to just use U for our we do need to put it in brackets because we need to create a vector. We're going to put a U in here for the R, and then we're going to do plus, all right? So this is our first parameter. We're going to actually make sure, and I don't know if people heard that beeping in the background. My wife is making brownies. Anyway, so we do U, all right? So why are we doing U? Because the first parameter in an RGB FBM is going to be the U parameter, which is what we're going to be messing with anyway. So we're going to just say here we're going to do bracket. We're going to do frame because we want to get every frame. We're going to be using every frame. All right. So we're taking the U coordinates. This is UV. We're adding to it the frame. And then because we want this to increment or change over time, we're going to multiply the frame number times some increment value to create the offset to move this vertically up. So we're going to multiply it times 0.001. All right. And that, all right, I put that in there like that, and that should create our vertical movement. All right. Then what we're going to do is for the V channel, actually what we're going to do, we want to correct for the aspect ratio. All right, this is going to, let's just pop over here for a minute. Let's go over here. Let's put over here, let's just put our defaults in here. Let's put V for V, and then I'm going to put, yes, and then we want to put, we'll just put for the time being a 0 over here for the so we have our U, our V, and our W or X, Y, and Z, depending on how you want to look at it. And when we do this, so if we do a U and V, we can see it's not very bright or dark at this point. The V, but the problem we run into is that this doesn't have an aspect ratio to it. The V is, or I should say the U is going to be wider than the V is tall because U and V are it's a 0 to 1 coordinate system. So what we have to do in order to fix this, to get our aspect ratio correct, is we actually have to divide it by our actual aspect ratio. And so we could either multiply or divide, but what we want to do here is we want to put in our aspect ratio, which for the V, given this is an HD resolution, this would also work for for UHD, we want to put in 1.7778. I'm going to just add an extra one in there just to make sure and put that in parentheses. And what that's going to do is it's going to correct it. So vertically, this is these blobs, these FBM blobs are uniform and so forth. All right. So that's what we're going to be doing there. And now what we want to do is I'm going to enable lower proxy resolutions just so that we can watch this a little bit quicker. So we can hit play and just watch what this is doing in real time. I'm going to do it at 8 passes. So hopefully we might see this moving. It's moving very, very slowly. I'm not sure if we're going to actually see it here, but it's moving horizontally very, very slowly. If you might be able to see this darkness is moving, this dark patch is moving, slide from one side to the other. All right, so what we're also going to do to give it a little more dimension is we're going to move it in and out on the Z. So how are we going to do that? Well, what I'm going to do is take it and we're going to do, let's see, we're going to take it and we're going to go frame times, and then we're going to do it a small amount. So we're going to put 0.001. And let's see how that plays out. For right now, this is just gives us our base. This may be too slow. All right. And what we're going to do here is, you know what? Let's take a look at how it's applying to the actual Distort at this point. Is this actually... Why are we not getting... You know what? Oh, we need to also add 1 to our alpha so that we can actually see it. All right, so what is that done? What did that do to our text here? Let's play it and look at it, and we might start seeing what it's doing here. And it's moving it ever so slightly back and forth. And you can see it really shows up when it's stopped. But I think I want to make that a little bit more, or emphasize that a bit more. So we're going to take this entire color that we've created here, that's modifying over time, this FBM color, and we're going to, after the last bracket, we're going to multiply everything inside of that color bracket by 5. All right? That should emphasize it a bit more. And now we should see a lot more. There we go. Now we're seeing some big movements with that. There we go. That's what I want to see. All right. I like that. And we're getting a nice... So the reason that we use 0.001 is that's moving it very, very slowly. And then this is the amount that it's moving. So we're multiplying the amplitude of it by that amount, but this frame bit times 0.001, that's how quickly that's moving, and this is multiplying to increase the amplitude so it's bigger, so it's more visible. All right, so that's what we've done. That's a horizontal movement. Now for the vertical movement, what we're going to do is another FBM. Whoops, not FBN, FBM, bracket, and in this one, we're going to also create a vector, and we're going to use for our first parameter, just going to use the U, comma, and then we're going to do pretty much the same thing we did with the V. We're going to do V divided by 1.778, oh, excuse me, 3 sevens and an 8, 3 sevens and an 8 inside of a parenthesis, and then we, for the depth, we also want this to move in and out. So that should make that move at so it comes towards us. So we're going to do frame times, we're going to say point. Oh, look at that. This one's got a really slow number. So we want to do this at a lower speed. So we're going to do, well, it looks like I got 4 zeros for that one. This is just going to make it move very, very slowly towards us on the vertical, so it moves the offset. And you could do this, but then what we're going to do, all right, let's just take a look at what that does for right now. All right, let's see, this should, now we're getting a little bit of vertical movement, but I want to, again, amplify that movement a bit more, so we're going to multiply the whole thing times 5. All right, and as we can see, that just shifted everything up and down. So now when we hit play, we get this. Now we're cooking. We've got this really creepy, crawly, moving, you know, it's very cool looking. All right, so that gets our fundamental movement right there. I think that's all we need for that. And again, the whole reason we used 1 here in the alpha channel is because without it, it would render black. We don't need anything in the blue channel, so that gets it. Now we could recreate that by using an FBM and then using creating an actually SE noise with an FBM, making this animate, putting these values into each of the channels of it. But it's the same exact thing. We'd have to take that, then we'd have to create a second one for we'd have to make one that was green channel, one that's the red channel, red channel and green channel, and then we would animate those over time in almost the same way, and then we could animate it. And you can do that if you want. Makes no never mind to me. So anyway, we've got that done. So let's just drop this back out. I'm going to drop this down to 2 so that we can see this a little bit better. Next thing we need to do, we need to create, I want this to look like ghosty, as I said before. This is warbling, but part of what creates that like a ghost-like effect is like ghosts tend to have like after images to themselves that are transparent and whatnot. So how we're going to do that is we're going to use we're going to do a time offset, I believe. Oh, is that right? Yes, time offset. I need to zoom in on my other project a little bit. So time offset. There we go. And we're going to do this twice. We're going to just, and we're going to link them up like so. Oops, like this and like that. And one we're going to set backwards in time, and the other one we're going to set forward in time. Now, the reason we used an expression to drive this movement right here, as opposed to animating it with actual keyframes, is because this is not affected by physical time. If we actually animated with keyframes using like with an SE noise, the big problem we'd have to do is, in order to go back further in time, we would have to, if we actually did keyframes to animate the texture, we would have to then set up something in the channels. We'd actually have to keyframe those channels and so forth, whereas this automatically gives us our channel movement by default, so it saves us some trouble. So all right, so what does that mean? That means that we can look back in time 50 frames, and even though this animation starts on frame 0, we can still look back in time, because SEEXPR does have temporal coherence. By that I mean that unlike a lot of shader toy, a lot of times the GLSL sometimes has issues looking forward and backwards in times, and it can cause Natron to glitch out and so forth, unless I think it can do it internally, but it can't really communicate that to another node that's requesting it of it. But SEEXPR definitely can. So we can look back in time with this time offset node. So what we're going to do is tell this that we want to look back in time. I think, let me just double check. I think it's just 50 frames. Yep. So we're going to just tell this one we want to look back 50 frames. And then we're going to tell this other one that we want to look ahead 50 frames. All right. Whoops, not 550. All right. So what does that mean? That means when we look back in time, it looks like this. And when we look forward in time, it looks like that. So then what we're gonna do with these two is we're going to add the two offsets together. So we're going to do a merge. It doesn't matter which one we use. We can just connect the two together, and that puts the two together. And then what we're going to do is, instead of over, we're going to do an add or plus. I think that's what I used. Yep, plus. And I don't want it to be super duper bright. I want this to be down low, so I'm going to drop the plus value so that these two, oh yes, and I don't want either of them to be in B, because if we use B, the problem that we run into is that we lose the ability to drop their value. So we're going to take it and connect the first one to A, input A, leaving B blank, and then connect the second one to A2. That way, when we drop the mix value, we can dim both of these simultaneously. Now, just so you understand what I'm talking about here, watch what happens if I had done that differently. If I connected B here and A to it, you can see that the B input remains solid because it doesn't take this mix factor into consideration. So we want to connect up, doesn't matter again which one we do to which input, but you can see, there we go. We have it, we've dulled it down to 20% of its original value. All right, so they're layered together. And that gives them just this sort of ghostly offset. They're transparent, so anything we put behind them will be transparent. All right, so then what are we going to do? Well, we need to color this, because I want to color these separate from this. We want to overlay this over both of those in the background, but we want these to be colored differently. So we're going to put another merge node over here, or underneath here. And then we're going to put a constant, because we're dealing with things that we want to preserve the alpha channel. So I want to do a constant here, connect that to the A input, and this we're going to multiply whatever our color is coming from this constant over the background, which is basically the equivalent, as we know, with pre-multiplication, or it's called multiply because we take whatever, multiply white times whatever color we have, or whatever the foreground stuff is, and that creates our thing. So we're going to pre-multiply this basically against this, or multiply this against this, and then pre-multiply that for the alpha channel. If we want to. We don't have to worry because it's going to naturally happen. So we're going to just take this and go multiply, which changes it. It disappeared because our constant is currently black. We want to change our constant color. I think I set it. Let me just double check. Oops, I can't switch out because that has I picked, actually think I picked that, which is kind of weird. Let me make sure. Yes, that is indeed. So I picked this kind of pinkish look. It doesn't look as pink in the final animation because this is, remember, this is a ghostly background thing, but I want it to have sort of a bluish sort of hue to the orange, and when you add blue to reddish orangey colors, you wind up with something more pink, which is why we have that. You can see we have blue mixed in here. All right, so now, oh yes, because we did a plus up here, the big problem we face is the fact that this is now has the potential to go above 1. We don't want, anytime I do a plus or multiply or something like that, a lot of times we want to clamp it afterwards. So we're going to clamp. So we're going to clamp that just to be, I've had problems in the past where I didn't clamp things, and we can see the clamp for some reason is not liking that. Why is the clamp not liking that? That's interesting to me. All right. Huh. Says it's pre-multiplied. Let me just double check this. All right, multiply. That's good. That's good. Huh. That should go down there. Source. Oh, I bet you. Let me just check something. 1. Aha! Here's the problem. Our alpha on our color was not set to 1. If we set that to 1, that fixes it. So what was happening is over here, if we were to look at the alpha channel before, it had an alpha of 0, so it was sending transparency out. When we go into the merge, what happens is A over B, it multiplies black, no alpha, against the alpha that's here, and we wind up with nothing because black will become nothing. So what we want to do is back over here, we want to take that alpha and we multiply, bring it up to 1. So now we're multiplying 1 against the original alpha, which will result in the exact same thing, because 1 times whatever's there in the alpha channel becomes the new alpha channel. So when we go down here, we still have the alpha channel. We hit A, and we wind up with this. And remember, this is a pre-multiplied thing. This is going to be pre-multiplied, so this is going to get actually darker when it's actually overlaid onto or under something else, or it should potentially be darker. It's not guaranteed. Natron gets weird with that type of stuff. So, okay, so this branch is finished. So now what we need to do is go back to our main branch over here. Let's put a nice little dot period here by just control clicking on the middle of this. Control shows the ability, and just clicking on one of these yellow dots pulls out a dot. So there's our dot, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put another a multiply here. So I'm going to hit tab, multiply. So, oops, wrong type of, not multiply, merge. We want to merge. Just hit M, and we want to change the merge to multiply, because we're going to multiply this just like we did before. We're going to be coloring this. And we want to do another constant. In fact, we can just copy this constant over here, use that over it. For this one, it doesn't matter, because we're this one we want to superimpose on top of the other one. So, but we do want to keep the, I think, I just want to make sure, yes, we want to keep the alpha value at 1, but we want to change its color. And in this case, what we're going to do is, I think I just picked a straight orange, like so. Let me make sure. Yes, that's exactly what I picked. I picked this orange right here, which gives us this nice orangey color. So we're going to be, of course, taking this, and now we need to, because I want this, the main title, again, to look old and like it was filmed on an old camera. So one of the things that happens with older film is the way they created these type of titles in the past is they would project light through some form of cellophane and so forth, and you would get this thing called halation. Or in glow. So we need to create halation and glow, and it also, they tended to desaturate a bit, and we'll deal with all this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put a glow in at this point, because I want this part to glow, but I don't want the after images. Why? Because I just think it'll be, whoops, cooler. And forgot that I hooked it up to the wrong thing. I want the one to go in here, the input to go in there, connect that up to there. So there's our glow. And for our glow, let me pull up my glow settings so I can see and explain. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to drop our highlight isolation. Remember, our highlight isolation on a glow determines at what value, what our brightest value that will influence the glow, will have an effect on the glow. And usually when you set it up to 0.25, that means you really need very, very bright values, and this orange is not very, very bright by default. So we're going to drop this down to 0.05 as opposed to 2.5. All right, so that will make it so that this will be affected more by it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to increase the gain to 2, which we can start to see there's a little bit of a glow going on there. I don't know if you can see it. It's just barely adding a little bit of glow. But to aid in that a bit more, we're going to boost up the gamma value a bit. And there we go. Now we can really see that, but it's too big. It's just too big. It's going out far too much. So we're going to reduce the overall size of this just a bit. We're going to bring it down to 1. So now we get this really bright, intense glow right off of the edge of it, so it glows right around each of the letters and right in these hot spots where it's bright. So if we look at it, let's look at it before. This was before the glow, and this is after the glow, and it just really creates this old sort of halation, glowy feel to the horror. All right, and then what we're going to do is superimpose this over our other one. All right, so we're going to take our clamp and we're going to do a merge, so hit M. And we're going to take our glow, merge it over it, and then we get that, which is, I think, all I did. Just want to make sure. Yep, that's all we're going to do. Whoa, that was awfully loud of me. I'm hoping... Oh, yes, I didn't check. Is my audio working? Yes, my audio is working. Hopefully I'm not too loud. All right, so next up, we're going to we need to now move this in space. So now we're going to get to the physical animation. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to actually drop it back to a value of 8 for our animation. And what we're going to do is we're going to do, surprise, surprise, Card 3D, because Card 3D is one of the best ways to move titles in 3D space. So Card 3D. And we go over here. Let me see what my Card 3D settings were. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And according to my thing, what I did is back here at the beginning, I set... Okay, so I set at the beginning, I set this to minus 0.02. Oops, wait a minute. That's not right. Oh no, we start off closer. What we want to do is get this nice and close. Minus point. We want to keep it very, very close. So I want to go even. I'm gonna just make it 0.02. So it's nice and big. All right, just like so. So it's very big at the beginning. We're gonna set a keyframe on this one frame because we're going to be zooming it away from us. So we started off very big. Then we're going to go ahead in time 24 frames. Okay, because I always like to give a little bit of a black buffer. So I believe I did 24 frames, which should get us to frame 25, which it did. And at frame 25, what we're going to do is go from 0.02 to 0.3, all right? Which will shrink it down to there. And that's what it's going to look like on 0.3 now. Remember, this looks like this. Mainly, here, let's just turn this off temporarily so we can see. This is the actual resolution. And I'm not worried, again, about it being soft because, again, we're after this ghostly look. We don't have to worry about it being, you know, a little on the lower resolution side. It's retro. We're doing this. This it makes it look a little softer, which adds to this sort of this horror, old, creepy factor. So we're perfectly happy. Don't go. I mean, you can, but to me, this is just adds to it. All right. So then I think I just went all the way to the end. Thought I did. Or did I just? No. Oh, right. This is one of those times we go to the curve editor and we just we take our Z translate, we click on it, make sure it's highlighted. Whoopsie, I didn't mean to double click and add a key. I want to click on it so it's highlighted like this. And then I want to right click on it and I want to do interpolation. Let's do Catmull ROM. Nope, it's not going to do it on one. We have to select the actual individual ones. So I'm going to just select this first one and go interpolation, Catmull ROM interpolation. Now, it's very important. I want to make sure that I just want to do it up here as well. Just not because we need it necessarily to go into the negatives, but you never know. You might want to offset it. Somebody may want to unset it. It's better to have it set so that it's working in a perfectly through time in case you decide, hey, what if you wanted to offset, you know, one of the glows or something, although that would involve duplicating the Card 3D. Anyway, so we've got it, so now it will continue on in this movement. So when we go past this point in time, as we can see, we need to put back in the frame. So there we go. We can see now as we scrub through this that it moves continuously through the entire length of it. So if we hit play, we can watch this as it's moving. But the problem we have, of course, is it's not showing us what we want. We're just seeing this horror title moving back, and it's just going to keep going all the way from the beginning to the end. So we need to go back to our node graph, and of course, after our Card 3D, we need to add some other stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to do add two blurbles. Let's first focus. I'm just debating about whether we're first going to do. We're going to add a couple more effects to this overall thing. The first effect we're going to do is we're going to add dirt. Okay, now a lot of people, when they think of old movies, you think of dirt. You know, dirt gets on the film because the film's been sitting in storage forever or whatnot, and that dirt, you know, will it moves and so forth, but it doesn't. It's not actually dirt on the from the actual filming of it, so it won't move with the text as it moves back in space. It's going to appear on top of the film stock or whatever, and we're going to actually do something that's not really right, but we're going to do it anyway because it's just easier. Because we're going to be using a cheat to do another effect later, and it works best after everything is sort of put together. It won't affect too much, but so what we're going to do is we're going to put a merge node in here, and we need to create dirt, and the best node for doing dirt is, of course, SE noise. Or at least that's my opinion. So let's look over at our SE noise, and on our SE noise, the first thing we want to do, personally, I like the noise to look like little hairs or blobbies or something along those lines, or at least have it so it looks like these things, because dust is very rarely just a solid particle. You want it to look more well, as I say, like hairs or something, or small fuzzy particles that have floated onto whatever. So we're going to switch to turbulence, because turbulence starts giving us these like tendril-like looks in here. And we're going to keep this. It doesn't matter that we're at 0.8 at the moment. So we're going to set that, and we're also going to set the gain up to 1. So we're going to set this to 1, which makes this a lot brighter. And then what we're going to do to separate this, will make this pop out more. This isn't the most ideal. There's a whole bunch of ways we could do this, but we're going to just clamp this. We've used this effect with SE for a while, for doing stars and things, but we're just going to do a clamp here. And we're going to enable the max min, and we're going to set the maximum down to 0.3. Okay, so it drops this down. Let's turn this off for the moment so that we can see it at full resolution. So here we could go. We can see that this, like right here, we see a little bit, just a little bit of a blob. Now these are very gray at the moment, so I want to increase the minimum up to 2. I believe it's what I did. Yeah, I set it to 0.2 by 0.3. So that makes it a little bit darker, so that's not perfect, but we can see that we get these things that look like just little bitty curves and so forth, which is much more. And over here we get this like swirly blob, and we get, you know, all these little bits. Now, the big problem that we run into is that this is, I want these to really show up as well, and these seem a little I thought looked a little potentially small, but I liked the layout of the pattern, but I want them to be, because we're just we want this to show up, but we want it to show up on hold on, we want it to show up on this tiny little area right here all the time, because we want it to show up over this text. So we need to make sure there's plenty of bits in there that are showing up on top of this. So I liked the bit count that we get with this when we have it like this, but I want to make them, emphasize them a bit more. So we're going to put an erode smooth in here, and that is also going to allow us to soften these edges, because as we know, when we clamp it, it hardens up the edges of these things a lot. This is very hard edged, and I don't like, you know, old things to look hard. They need to look soft. This shouldn't be harder than so clamp. Let's go clamp. Whoops, wait a minute. Not what I wanted. I saw the clamp and I hit clamp. No, we want erode, excuse me. Erode smooth. And for the erode smooth, we're going to increase the size. We're going to keep this little area so we can see this nice and clear. We're going to increase the size of the erode smooth up to 5. Which may seem harsh at first, But then we're going to drop the exponent back down to 1. All right, and all that does is it just adds this little bit of softness around the edges of it. So we can see it goes from that to that. Not much, but that little bit of extra just will make the whole thing look a little bit more retro, and they'll stand out a little bit more. Okay, and then I also did one other thing I want to, just to ensure it, because there still are bits that, like over here, that didn't get affected by the fast blur, so by the erode smooth. So what I want to also do is put in a fast blur. Fast blur is an OpenGL thing, and we can see when I do that, it gets it it's just too heavy, because this is a GL effect, it's very quick. So we're going to just drop the fast blur down to a nice low number, like around 4. 4 ought to give it, there we go. I think I can live with 4. And that just makes makes them look a little more blobby and out of focus, little particles. We get rings, and we get all kinds of little blobs and stuff, and it's not perfect, but this stuff is going to be flashing by very, very quick. And when we look at this, let's hit this and go, or hit F here, and then we're going to just maximize this and get one. When this stuff is moving by our screen really, really quickly, we're not going to really notice it. So let's hit F here and go hit spacebar to minimize that. And then back here, so now we need to actually animate this, because right now if we go back in time and hit play, it's just staying stationary. And we don't want this to be stationary. We want this to actually be animated. So, you know, in the past, a lot of times with stuff that is on film, there's motion blur, because the motion carries on film from frame to frame. But dirt isn't on the film. It doesn't have a frame that comes after it that's moving with it. Dirt is just on that single piece of frame, or that single piece of celluloid, and then it's there for a second and it's gone. So we don't need motion blur with it. We don't want it, because that's not actually how it would work. But at the same time, we want this to sort of feel like there is sort of this feeling of an upward motion with it at the same time as well. So what I did is we want to go into the transform nodes, and we're going to set the Y, and we're going to go back to the beginning. I just want to make sure I get the values correct. And for the Y, we're just going to set a key 0 on this, and then we're going to go to the last frame, and because we're only doing that, and we're going to set this to minus 1350. Why minus 1350? I think what I did is I took 250 and I think I multiplied it times, let me just double check. Let's pull up a let's see, 250. Oh no, not 250. I want to do 1350 divided by 250. What was that? No? I don't know. Wait a minute. Is that right? Oh, I know why I wanted to do it that slow. I wanted this. All right. We're doing the vertical resolution. What we need to do is move this the whole thing up 1 unit's worth of whatever. All right, so I'm pretty sure. I just want to double check something here. Hold on. Don't want to make. Yes. Hold on. Is this actually 1350? Oh, wait a minute. No. Oh, I was wrong. I did. Okay, hold on. I made it much, much, much bigger than that. It's like, I don't think I did 13. I want to. I'm like, that's way too low a number. What I did is I did the original. Hold on. Boom. 13 divided by. Divided by. No. Let's do. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. I basically did some math. I originally said it's too slow. Let's do it 5 times. And then I said, let's do it 10 times, or let's do it 25 times, or something along those lines. Anyhow, it turns out that it wasn't 1350, it's 135,000. There we go. So we want 2 more zeros added on at the end. That will get it so that it's moving at a lot faster pace. So now if we hit play, we can see, and I don't know, it may not come across that way. You know what, I'm gonna just make it go at a faster pace, and we can see that we get the sense of dust in front of a camera. Now, admittedly, this is over white currently because it's white. It is black and white. And the reason we're doing black and white is, well, because we're going to multiply this times whatever our actual original image is to apply the dust. Remember, white times whatever we have here will be white, or the original image, and then black, whatever fades towards black, will become black. So if I take this and I just do a merge node on top of here, and then put that in here so that it's over it, and then change this to multiply, boom, as the combination, and by keeping this at 8, we can now watch this as it's moving, and we can sort of see, I don't know if we can see that. It might be just a smidge too. Let's drop it down to 4 so that we can see this a bit better, hopefully. This might take, there we go. We can now see that dust and debris on there. And it just, every frame we get enough dust and debris on it so that it looks like it's a new frame. And that is how we create that kind of dust effect on film, so to speak, or something that's supposed to look like old film. You can make this more complicated, but if you make it more complicated, it's not necessarily going to make it any better, unless you have more going on in your frame, and we don't need that happening. Let's just take a look at where that looks like, and we can see it looks a lot like debris, dust and debris. All right, so spacebar, go back to the screen. There we go. So that's what we've got there. Let's see, next thing down. All right, so we haven't dealt with the fact that this is solid. This is a solid color the whole time. It's completely visible. We want to fade this. Plus, we can also see that our ROD for this entire thing is actually bigger than our actual image. In fact, it gets way bigger than our entire image, because that horror gets scaled way up out here. And we don't need that. Why would we keep that? Because that's not going to be used in the final animation. So we're doing this first because we're going to do one more thing, effect afterwards. And it has to do with the fact that the last effect we're going to do is, or actually there's 2 more bits we're going to do, excuse me. All right, let's, first things first. We're going to create a constant over here. And we're going to keep it black, except for we're going to change it so that the alpha is 1. All right. And that will make it so that it's black. It's very much the same as using a solid, except for because we're going to be merging this. So we're going to hit M and hit merge to merge the constant over this. And we're going to put that so that the other goes on top of it. And then for the ROD, what we're going to do here for this is we're going to obviously set the, whoops, no. We're going to say bounding box, we're going to say B. And by doing that, what it does is it crops it, so the only thing that's rendering for its bounding box is the HD. And that's going to make it render that much faster, because it doesn't have to render the entire thing. All right, so that's the first thing. But this is also useful because this is our background. And by the way, if you had anything that was going to, if you wanted to do this over a solid, an actual color, we could, for example, if I wanted to do this, no, red. Let's say we want to do this over blue. You can see it's actually doing that entire horror sequence over the blue. And because I think our horror title is transparent, it is using that as well. We could, in theory, if we wanted to, we could modify our alpha channel so that the alpha channel was taken or was modified to solidify some bits and pieces and whatnot. Wait a minute. Oh, yes, I'm multiplying it at the wrong point. Yeah, no, yeah, that's fine. The big problem is, of course, this is multiplying over it. The multiply is making it black, which is also applying to the alpha, which actually we probably don't want to have happen. Let me just, I'm just realized, I don't think, let's see. Yeah, we're not going to worry about it. Not going to worry about it. That's a detail. Our dust is basically not being black at this point because we've got it multiplied and it's multiplying against the alpha channel. We can fix that by modifying potentially the SE noise so that I think if we told it not to include the alpha, no. Oh, bother. We would have to tell it maybe the... Well, that's doing that. That is doing it, but it's still not multiplying it times the original. Anyway, not going to worry about it. It's good enough. If you wanted to, you could rearrange this and just do the superimposing, after this point if you wanted to instead. That's a possibility. We could just, do this there and then reverse this like so, and there we go. That way this occurs there, but as you can see now we have the other is getting trimmed. So what we would have to do is tell it that we want this to output the bounding box of B, and there we go, and that fixes the problem. So now no matter what, we wind up with the black bits being black. All right, so anyway, let's just reset that to 0. Keep that at 1, make sure the alpha is 1 on this constant, and there we go. Problem solved. Sorry. Now, all right, so I said there was one other, well, there's 2 other things we're going to do. First thing we need to do is with older systems, with older cameras and stuff, when they did a lot of this stuff, particularly with horror, the horror genre, which is one of the reasons this is kind of fun to do. A lot of times horror films were not incredibly high-grossing product. They were B grade, or C grade or D grade or whatever. They had there was cheesiness, which means they didn't have expensive gear to do a lot of things. And when you so they wouldn't get these really elaborate dollies and so forth. So people would cheat. One potential way you might cheat is you might take something like a wheelchair and put a person sitting in the wheelchair with the camera slapped over their shoulder and point the shoulder at something, and then push the person in or pull them away very, very slowly. This happens in Halloween, the movie, the original movie. If you watch the opening sequence of that, you'll notice there's a pumpkin, and they're zooming, in on the pumpkin over time, and either they zoomed in or they pushed somebody in, but it's very clear that they had a handheld camera movement, or it was very handheld, which gave it this little bit of shimmy and shiver that you don't see a lot in more modern stuff. So we're going to just try and do that, and the quickest way of doing that, there's a lot of ways we could do this, but the quickest way is actually a community plugin called Shaker. So we go to community and we go down to, I don't know if you're going to see that because it's way over here, community, down to transform, and we have this thing called Shaker. There's Wiggler and Shaker. We click on Shaker, Shaker pulls up this, and what Shaker does is it makes things wobble. And all we're going to do, if we, let's drop this down to a really low level so we can see this. Oh, right. We didn't do the actual animation of the fade in and fade out. I skipped a bit. Let me go back. We're going to take it, before we do Shaker, let's put Shaker off to the side because I don't want that actually going at this point. Let's finish this fade in and fade out. Go back to the beginning. All right. So what I did here on this is I set the fade here, this constant, to 0. All right, and we set a key, and then we of course go ahead 24 frames, and we set another key for the mix. I do believe, let me make sure I'm getting the exact frames. Hold on. Why? Oh, I see what's going on. There you go. Okay, so 25 frames. Then at 97 frames, so I think I just whoops, no, stop. Go back here. We go ahead, 97 is 3 seconds, and over 3 seconds I want this to sort of fade in, because this is slow, and you want this sort of ghostly, slow fade in. So we're going to make it fade in over 3 seconds, okay, to full value. And then we're going to go ahead. I believe I went ahead 1 second. Let me make sure. I'm going to just make sure. So 24 over, boom. Yeah, two seconds more. So I'm going to go 1, 2, which gets us to 145. We're going to set this again. Just create a key for the mix at 1. And then we're going to, I believe over 3 seconds, fade it out. Yep, 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, and at this point in time, we should fade it out. Which means, of course, we need to go into the curve editor for this and start messing with things. So as we can see over here, we have this problem that it is, it is smooth. It sort of eases in over here, then levels out here. Let's try and fit that here. We can see it's easing in here, and it eases out up here, and it eases in up there, but then it just stops down there. And I just want to make sure, I think in the original one, yes, I eased all of them. So what we want to do is just take this last one, right click on it, select it, right click on it, hold on, we want to right click here with it selected and go to horizontal, all right? And when we do horizontal, it just makes it horizontal so that it will ease out. So that will create our whole effect, and if we hit play now, we should see it fades in and then fades out at the end with everything going on there, and we're good to go. Now we're not seeing it because we're not seeing a lot of the details because we have this at 8 for our preview. All right, so now I want to add shaker in. So let's go back to an area in our timeline where this is visible, which is right in here. And let's take a look at what shaker does. So shaker has sorry, I'm pulling up the settings and so forth. Shaker has a bunch of stuff on the side here. One of the things that it has is it does rotational, and we don't want this to rotate as it's moving. I want it to just look like whoever's holding it isn't holding it steady. So we want to get rid of the rotational. What we want to do is just get rid of the rotational amplitude. We're going to set it from 5 to 0, and that straightens this out. All right. And now let's look at this, okay? So the main things that we're interested in are the horizontal, or the translational amplitude and the translation frequency. So amplitude is how far it moves, and frequency is how quick it moves. The lower the frequency, the longer between each movement, and the higher the amplitude, the greater the movement. So now it should be very big. So if we hit play here, let me just, it's hit the wrong button. There we go. And we can see it's moving around, and it's moving really big amounts, and it's not moving fast enough at all. It doesn't look handheld in any way, shape, or form. As I don't want to waste too much time, what we're going to do is we're going to drop our translational amplitude down to 10 so that it doesn't move as much. And then we're going to increase the frequency up to 30 so it happens more frequently. So now when we hit play, we'll see that the movements are happening a lot more in line with it. So it looks like somebody's moving along and they just bobbled just a little bit. If you bobble a little bit, it adds a bit of a handheld kind of feel to the overall thing. And we can see it right in there. All right, so I won't say that, by the way, I don't know that this is necessarily a repeatable frequency. just so you're aware. But the reason that we're putting the shaker here is because shaker for some reason has issues with alpha channels that are not solid. So we want to make sure that when we come out of this, that's actually bad. We don't want this to be like that. We want to, let's take that off. Let me just see something here. That's very bad. All right, there we go. We'll just tell it so that this multiply, we want it to be, we want to remove the alpha. We don't want it to modify the alpha from the B on its output, because we don't want to get those little holes in the alpha. We want it to be solid because our background is being added in at this point up here. So we don't want it to get down into the shaker. Trust me, and it will also, that will alter the output if you were to render this with something else. All right, so there's one last thing I want to do in this, which is this is, we're trying to do old film, and we started off with something that was very, very, very bright, very saturated color. This is a very, very saturated color here, and this is a very, very saturated color right over here. With film, you don't actually wind up, especially when you do a film transfer to digital, you don't ever wind up with something that is at its maximum. Not when it's colored. You'll wind up with something that's off. And so what we need to do is just take the saturation down a little bit. And so what we're going to do for our last bit is we're going to put in a saturation node. All right, and we put in the saturation, and we're going to keep it Rec 709 for our luminance, and we're going to clamp the white just to ensure it, because one of the nice things about the saturation node is we get auto clamping, which is why I wasn't worried. We don't have to throw a clamp node in, but we're just going to drop this down from 1 down to 0.95. All right, and that's just going to take a bit of the edge off of this. Let's see if we can see what it does. It's probably very subtle. I don't even know if this is going to show up in YouTube or in the stream, excuse me, but it's just turning it from a really bright orange to a slightly dull orange. It's just slightly off, more like it's not pure, and that will it adds again to the overall look of this being old school, old classic sort of thing. And so this is what it ultimately looks like. Let's just take a look and see if we can see this. Does that change anything? Yeah, it's not very visible. It is visible if you actually were to watch these things side by side on a computer monitor. You can decide if you want that or not. I like it. I think it adds just that extra flair to it. So this is what our final thing looks like. We're going to drop it down to 4 and render it out, or view it at least, just so. Let's fit it. We'll just do a quick preview here. This might take a smidge, so you can just kind of get a sense for what this is going to look like, and then at least with the words horror, and then, you know, once this is done, we can see there's all the little bits and so forth. And this is no different. This is exactly how I did it with the Natron on the original one. And so once that is done, you know what? I might just, for the moment, I'm going to switch over to this so that we can see just that playing without my mug showing up on the screen. So, all right, it's given us good enough output at this point that I feel like we can just hit play and get a sense for what's going on. All right, that's good enough. So there we go. That's what it looks like in sort of not perfect speed. But anyway, that's good enough. We made it. We're going to just save this. No, I'm not going to save the project yet, only because I don't know where it's set to save. I will save this out, and I will be adding this to our the available projects for download in the future. This is would be good. And right, so yeah, hey, Natron didn't give us any lip, although well, wait a minute, I'm not even visible. Natron didn't give us any lip today, although we should shoot it war because we can. Sorry, Natron. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Boy, alright, so oh yes, wait, I want to show you the goal. I should show the goal one more time. So today's goal was this. And I think we achieved that, so thanks for watching and keep on Natroning.